Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session looking at the Proverbs of John Heywood. It's the dialogue of Proverbs printed in 1546 after John Heywood's dramatic works that we know of are done with. That's not to say he didn't write more plays, but they are any future ones are lost to us. It's a couple of years after he had a pretty poor time of it when it came to the king and the official religious settlement at the time. And so he wrote something, shall we say, non-controversial. And this is what he wrote, and it was I say, most successful text, and a text that in many ways was most known after his lifetime in the early modern age. So if you knew about John Heywood in later years, this is the thing you probably went for. This or one of the many following on books, because he spawned many other books of proverbs and epigrams, but this is the dialogue of Proverbs, and this is our first collection we're looking at. And in the room today we have Stephen, we have Liza, we have Eric, and we have Emma to read through the opening of this. We haven't precisely figured out how we're going to read this, so we've come up with a basic plan that Emma and Eric are going to alternate being the young man, and Liza and Stephen are going to alternate being the narrator figure, and we're going to see how well that works and whether that's a good or a terrible idea. So, before we begin, I'll ask Stephen to read the preface. And see what that tells us.
Among other things profiting in our tongue, those which much may profit, both old and young, such as on their fruit will feed or take hold, are our common plain pithy proverbs old. Some sense of some of which being bare and rude, yet to fine and fruitful effect they allude. And their sentences include so large a reach that almost in all things good lessons they teach. This write I not to teach, but to touch. For why? Men know this as well or better than I, but this and this rest I write for this, remembering and considering what the pith is, that by remembrance of these proverbs may grow. In this tale, erst talked with a friend, I show as many of them as we could fitly find, falling to purpose that might fall in mind, to the intent that the reader readily may find them and mind them when he will alway.
And we're just going to briefly pause there. It's a nice flowy preface. I thought that's nice. I'm reassured that the writing style of Heywood is flowy. It's quite light. I quite liked that. You know, it's not to teach but to touch. It's touching on things, not teaching. That's an interesting quality, that by remembrance of these proverbs may grow. So remember to plant your proverbs. It's a good time of year to be doing that, but make sure that you do it in a well-sized pot, otherwise they might wither on the vine. Any brief thoughts on this? I'll go to Eric.
It's a bit vague, so it feels like it could be, because it doesn't tell you, it just tells you it's proverbs, you know? It doesn't really tell you what proverbs what they're referring to, so it kind of tells you just like, we could stick it in front of anything.
Stephen?
I'm a little bit hazy on this, but I think that kind of proverbial-like stuff was used in the education system quite a lot. I seem to remember Erasmus's adages were part of the kind of school curriculum. So I wonder if there's behind that there is and he's a schoolmaster as well, isn't he? So behind that is this kind of sniff of the schoolroom, and he's sort of trying to shift it out of the schoolroom, if you like. So that would be teach and touch. That would give us teach and touch. But I also like find them and mind them as well, to the intent the reader readily may find them and mind them. So I wonder if it's sort of just kind of saying, remember the great time you had at school, learning foreign languages using this sort of stuff. Well, here's one you can take with you anywhere.
Well, yeah, I mean, Erasmus is very much a touchstone of some of his plays, and so the dialogues that are coming into print more and more at this time. But also, we've done quite a few plays a little after this. I say a little after this. After this, I don't think it's as prominent before this comes out, but I wonder if there's a sort of cause and effect thing here. But we've done quite a few what we might call proverb plays that have got a proverb as the title, and then you literally call and response to the audience throughout the play. And I do wonder if actually this might be the beginning of this I don't know if we could call it a genre, but it does seem to be that there's at least one playwright who is actively utilizing proverbs as a sort of go-to title for his plays every year, and that seems to be maybe a thing, but that's possibly in the future. I don't know if that's now. Let's dig into it. So I'm going to ask Liza to be the initial narrator in chapter 1, and I'll ask Emma to be the interlocutor, the young man, as and when we think that they are speaking. Fingers crossed that this flows logically.
Of mine acquaintance, a certain young man, being a resorter to me now and then, resorted lately, showing himself to be desirous to talk at length alone with me. And as we for this a meet place had won, with this old proverb this young man begun.
Whoso that knew what would be dear, should need be a merchant but 1 year. Though it,
Quoth he,
thing impossible be, the full sequel of present things to foresee, yet doth this proverb provoke every man, politically, as man possibly can, in things to come after, to cast eye before, to cast out, or keep in, things for forestall, as the provision may seem most profitable, and the commodity most commendable. Into this consideration I am wrought by 2 things, which fortune to hands hath brought. 2 women I know, of which twain the one is a maid of flowering age, a goodly one. The other, a widow, who so many years bears, that all her whiteness lieth in her white hairs. This maid hath friends rich, but riches she hath none, nor none can her hands get to live upon. This widow is very rich, and her friends bare, and both these for love to wed with me fond are. And both would I wed, the better and the worse, the one for her person, the t'other for her purse. They woo not my substance, but myself they woo. Goods have I none, and small good can I do. On this poor maid, her rich friends I clearly know, so she wed where they will, great gifts will bestow, but with them all I am so far from favour, that she shall sure have no groat if I have her, and I shall have as little all my friends swear, except I follow them to wed elsewhere. The poor friends of this rich widow bear no sway, but wed her and win wealth, when I will I may. Now, which of these twain is like to be dearest, in pain or pleasure to stick to me nearest? The depth of all doubts with you to consider, the sense of the said proverb sendeth me hither, the best bargain of both quickly to have scanned, for one of them I think to make out of hand.
And we'll just pause at the end of chapter 1. So we've got the setup, as it were, for what we might loosely call the plot, or at least the conceit. I think perhaps the conceit is a better thing. And as I say, he starts off with a proverb: whoso that knew what would be dear should need be a merchant but 1 year. So if you know the price of things, you're going to make a killing if you're a merchant, because you'd only need a year.
And also nobody, and also it's a sort of nobody can see the future accurately thing, right? because you can't tell what's going to be expensive in the future. Because if you did, you only need to work for 1 year and then you'd be rich enough to retire.
Yeah. That proverb does not help this particular young chap with his dilemma. In this particular, it's nice to have a choice, I suppose. Yes, that's the position he is in. As to who does he choose? Who does he choose? What does he do? Let's gather more data on this particular issue and thoughts upon it thereon as we go forward. So in the next chapter, I'll ask. We'll continue for a moment with the same two readers. So Liza, if you can be go back to being the narrator, who I think is taking up the cudgels here, and Emma, stand by in case that you are the young man again.
Friend, quoth I, welcome, and with right good will. I will, as I can, your mind herein fulfill. And 2 things I see in you that show you wise. First, in wedding, ere you wed, to ask advice. The second, your years being young, it appears, ye regard yet good proverbs of old fern years. And as ye ground your tale upon one of them, furnish me this tale with every one of them, such as may fitly fall in mind to dispose.
Agreed,
Quoth he. Then, quoth I, first this disclose. Have you to this old widow or this young maid any words of assurance ere this time said?
nay, in good faith.
Said he. Well then, said I will be plain with you and may honestly and plainly to speak. I like you, as I said, in 2 foretold things, but a third have I weighed, not so much to be liked as I can deem, which is in your wedding your haste too extreme. The best and worst thing to man for this life is good or ill choosing his good or ill wife. I mean, not only of body, good or bad, but of all things meet or unmeet to be had, such as at any time, by any means may, by man and wife, between man and wife, love increase or decay. Where this ground in any head gravely grateth, all fiery haste to wed it soon rebateth. Some things that provoke young men to wed in haste show after wedding that haste maketh waste. When time hath turned white sugar to white salt, then such folk see soft fire maketh sweet malt. And that deliberation doth men assist before they wed to beware of had I wist. And then their timely wedding doth clearly appear that they were early up and never the near. And once their hasty heat a little controlled, then perceive they well, hot love, soon cold. And when hasty witless mirth is mated well, good to be merry and wise, they think and feel. Haste in wedding some man thinketh his own avail, when haste proveth a rod made for his own tail. And when he is well beaten with his own rod, then seeth he haste and wisdom, things far odd. And that in all or most things wished at need, most times he seeth the more haste, the less speed. In less things than wedding, haste showeth hasty man's foe, so that the hasty man never wanteth woe. These sage said saws, if you take so profound as you take that by which you took your ground, then find ye grounded cause by these now here told, in haste to wedding, your haste to withhold. And though they seem wives for you never so fit, yet let not harmful haste so far outrun your wit, but that ye hark to hear all the whole sum that may please or displease you in time to come. Thus by these lessons you may learn good cheap, in wedding and in all things, to look ere ye leap.
Ye have even now well overlooked me,
Quoth he.
and let very nigh me too. For I agree that these sage sayings do weightily weigh against haste in all things, but I am at bay by other parables of like weighty weight, which haste me to wedding, as ye shall hear straight.
So, it's like, you got Proverbs, I got Proverbs too. Let me pull them out of my proverb bag. Shum, 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 shum. So yeah, you've got the sort of the game of the text, which is how many proverbs can I string together in a never-ending series of clauses. Thoughts from the room. Eric, you did the majority of the editing on this, thoughts.
I was thinking it's a rap battle, just like about marriage, or not getting married or whatever, because it all rhymes. It's just like, and it's very regular rhyme as well, sort of. I mean, regular rhythm as well. So it's kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you really can detect Heywood verse from a mile off. I mean, it's very distinctive, and he does have and when he's on fire, he's very, very good. I did find a couple of times when I was going, oh, I'm struggling to follow where that sentence is going. There is that nice bit. I think Eric put it in the chat, but there's this. Have you made any promises? No. Good. Have you promised yourself to anyone? Because otherwise, this whole rap battle is pointless. Other thoughts in the room?
I like this sort of game aspect. Oh, sorry, I should have put my hand up. There's this kind of game aspect about it, isn't there? You know, it reminds me a bit of the sort of improv games that you do sometimes, where you've got to mention three things that the audience is, an ox liver, a Rubik's cube, and Neville Chamberlain's piece of paper have all got to appear in the scene somehow. It sort of feels a little bit like that, kind of. And I know there's no constraint, but that kind of show-offness of pulling it off, and get this in, that in, this in, that in. And everybody presumably is kind of singing along with all of these great proverbial hits.
I mean, one of the questions is to ask, how performable is this as a text? I mean, not necessarily. I'm not necessarily thinking for a live show. I'm just sort of thinking in terms of recording it. But does it have a bit of life to it? Does it have a bit of bounce? And how's it flowing? Obviously, at this stage, it's a bit early to tell because there isn't much text yet. But because there is quite a lot more. Eric.
I was just going to say that I think Liza was enjoying it, sort of like mic drops and stuff. So it's kind of, I think it is performable to a degree, depending on how you do it, obviously.
Yeah, I think Liza's method of sort of doing a knowing wink every time you were dropping a proverb bomb, it was like, and this, it's like the club singer. And do you remember this one in the, for mid flow in a medley?
Okay, so maybe I overemphasize things a bit, but maybe if it were performed, you would need some indication of when a proverb was spoken. You would need either like everyone drink or something.
Stephen.
Well, you could just kind of a la Beastie Boys or sort of 80s hip hop, which is that everybody joins in on some things. So there's a few people there, so more haste, less speed. You have sort of three people shouting it, and then the individual hippity hop person carries on.
Hippity hop being the technical term there.
I believe the kids today refer to them as MCs.
It's one of the problems with the proverbs is though we recognize many of them, we don't necessarily recognize them as precisely as phrase. That the phrasing has changed. So actually getting an audience to sort of land on it is quite hard because it's not always because look before you leap is what I think most people say today, rather than look ere you leap. So it's there's that interesting component. Anyway, let's get some more text. Let's see where this rap battle's going. Let's swap one of our readers. Stephen, if you could be the narrator, and Emma, you can continue for the moment being the interlocutor who has basically laid down the cudgel and said, I think you continue talking in chapter 3, I think.
He that will not when he may, when he would, he shall have nay. Beauty or riches, the tone of the twain, now may I choose, and which me list obtain. And if we determine me this maid to take, then the tract of time train her me to forsake. Then my beautiful marriage lieth in the dyke, and never for beauty shall wed the like. Now, if we award me this widow to wed, and that I drive off time till time she be dead, then farewell riches, the fat is in the fire, and never shall I to like riches aspire. And 1,000-fold would it grieve me more that she in my fault should die 1 hour before, than 1 minute after, then haste must provoke. When the pig is proffered to hold up the poke, when the sun shineth, make hay, which is to say, take time when time cometh, lest time steal away. And one good lesson to this purpose I pipe, from the smith's forge, when the iron is hot, strike. The sure seaman seeth, the tide tarrieth no man, and long delays or absence somewhat to scan, since that the one will not another will, delays in wooers must needs their speed spill. And touching absence, the full account who summeth shall see, as fast as one goeth, another cometh. Time is tickle, and out of sight, out of mind. Then catch and hold while I may, fast bind, fast find. Blame me not to haste, for fear mine eye be bleared, and thereby the fat clean flit from my beard. Where wooers hop in and out, long time may bring him that hoppeth best at last to have the ring. I hopping without for a ring of a rush, and while I at length debate and beat the bush, there shall step in other men and catch the birds. And by long time lost in many vain words, between these two wives makes sloth speed confound, while between two stools my tail go to ground. By this, since we see sloth must breed a scab, best to stick to the tone out of hand, hab or nab. Thus all your proverbs, inveighing against haste, be answered with proverbs plain and promptly placed, whereby to purpose all this no further fits, but to show so many heads, so many wits, which show, I surely in all that they all tell, that in my wedding I may even as well tarry too long and thereby come too late, as come too soon by haste in any rate, and prove this proverb as the words thereof go, haste or sloth herein work neither wealth nor woe. Be it far or nigh, wedding is destiny, and hanging likewise, says the proverb, said I.
Oh, so that must be...
Oh, hang on.
Yeah,
Is that me?
Yeah, over to you.
Oh.
And hanging likewise.
Ah.
And hanging likewise, say that proverb, said I.
Then wed or hang,
Quoth he.
what helpeth in the whole, to haste or to hang aloof, happy man, happy dole.
You deal this dole, quoth I, out a wrong dur. The destiny in this case does not so stir against man's endeavour, but man may direct his will for provision to work or neglect. But to show that quick wedding may bring good speed, somewhat to purpose your proverbs prude indeed, howbeit, whether they counterpoise or outweigh the proverbs which I before them did lay. The trial thereof we will lay a water till we try more. The trying of which matter declare all commodities ye can devise, that by these two weddings to you can rise.
We'll go straight on into chapter 4, but we'll ask Eric if you could be the young man there, which I think you pick up the cudgels.
I will.
Quoth he.
In both these cases, straight show what things, as I think, to me by them will grow. And where my love began, there will begin will I, with this maid, the piece peerless in mine eye, whom I so favour, and she so favoureth me, that half a death to us, 'tis asunder to be. Affection each to other doth us so move, that well nigh without food we could live by love. For be I right sad or right sick from her sight, her presence absenteth all maladies quite, which showeth that the great ground in marriage standeth upon the liking the party's personage. And then of old proverbs in opening the pack, One showeth me openly, in love is no lack.
No lack of liking, but lack of living may lack in love, quoth I, may breed ill chiving,
Well, as to that,
said he.
hark this one thing, what time I lack not her, I lack nothing. But though we have naught, nor naught we can get, God never sendeth mouth, but he sendeth meat. And a hard beginning maketh a good ending. In space cometh grace, and this further amending. Seldom cometh the better, and like will to like. God sendeth cold after clothes, and this I pike. She by lack of substance, seeming but a spark, stainteth yet the stoutest, for a leg of a lark is better than the body of a kite, and home is homely though it be poor in sight. These proverbs for this part show such a flourish, and then this party doth delight to nourish, that much is my bow bent to shoot at these marks and kill fear. When the sky falleth, we shall have larks, or perils that fall may. Who feareth they fall shall so fear all things that he shall let fall all, and be more afraid than hurt if the things be done. Fear may force a man to cast beyond the moon. Who hopeth in God's help, his help cannot start. Nothing is impossible to a willing heart, and will may win my heart herein to consent, to take all things as it cometh, and be content. And here is,
Quoth he,
in marrying of this maid, for courage and commodity, all mine aid.
well said, quoth I, but a while keep we in quench all this case as touching this poor young wench, and now declare your whole consideration, what manner things draw your imagination toward your wedding, this widow rich and old.
That shall ye,
Quoth he,
out of hand, have told.
Now we'll go straight into chapter 5.
This widow, being foul and of favour ill, in good behaviour can very good skill, pleasantly spoken and very good wit. And at her table, when we together sit, I am well served, we fare of the best. The meat good and wholesomely dressed. Sweet and soft lodging, and therefore great shift, this felt and seen with all implements of thrift. Plate and money, such cupboards and coffers, and that without pain I may win these profits. And covetous, bearing Venus bargain back, may sing this bargain saith, better leave than lack. And greediness to draw desire to her lore saith that the wise man saith, store is no store. Who hath many peas may put the moe in the pot. Of two ills choose the least, while choice lieth in lot. Since lack is an ill as man may have, to provide for the worst, while the best itself save. Resty wealth willeth me this widow to win, to let the world wag, and take mine ease in mine inn. He must needs swim that is hold up by the chin. He laugheth that winneth, and this thread finer to spin, master promotion saith, make this substance sure. If riches bring one's portly countenance in your, then shalt thou rule the roost all about. Better to rule than be ruled by the rout. It is said, be it better, be it worse, do ye after him that beareth the purse. Thus be I by this, once le Seigneur de Grand, that many that commanded me, I shall command, and also I shall, to revenge former hurts, hold their noses to grindstone and sit on their skirts that erst sat on mine. And riches may make friends many ways, thus better to give than to take. And to make carnal appetite content, reason laboureth will to win will's consent, to take lack of beauty but an eyesore, as an eye for, or eyesore. The fair and the foul by dark are like store. When all candles are out, all cats be grey. All things are then of one colour, as who say, and this proverb saith, for quenching hot desire, foul water as soon as fair will quench hot fire. Where gifts be given freely, east, west, north, or south, no man ought to look a given horse in the mouth. And though her mouth be foul, she hath a fair tail. I consider this text that is most my avail. Want of white teeth and yellow hairs to behold, she flourisheth in white silver and yellow gold. What though she is toothless and bald as a coot? Her substance is shoot anger whereat I shoot. Take pain for a pleasure, all wise men can. What? Hungry dogs will eat dirty puddings, man. And here I conclude.
Quoth he.
Well, that I know. But this old widow, what good to me may grow.
And there we'll pause as we have now the young man's shall we say honest opinions of his two intended here. Before we get down to the morality of this whole situation, which is moderately problematic, but I just want to pick out a few proverbs that we've had so far. We've had two play titles. Like will to like, quoth the devil to the collier, altogether now drink. You have to go back and watch the video for that one to know what we're talking about there. And the tide tarrieth for no man has also been done, and many more will appear. But there are a couple that I'm just not particularly familiar with, and I quite liked. When the sky falleth, we shall have larks. I like this idea that if the sky falls, there'll be lots of birds. Is that what that's meaning?
They used to eat larks. Larks
yeah, so
were a delicacy.
Is that sort of cloud silver lining logic, isn't it?
Yeah, or it's an ill wind that blows nobody good.
But when the sky falleth, we shall have larks. Cool.
Far better than the Adele version, I think.
Eric.
I was more perplexed by all the sort of the fair and the foul by darker like store. What when all candles allow all cats be grey? Come on, it's like just. I mean, I can tell what they mean in context, but it's just like I did not expect them to be proverbs.
I've never heard as a proverb when all candles be out, all cats be grey. I mean, you know, it's in the context, it's a really problematic line.
I've heard plenty of versions of that, though. I've heard plenty of versions of that.
I've just not heard that particular phrasing. So yeah. Any other favourites or confusing ones? Because it's like we've got sort of bits of proverbs rather than necessarily the whole proverb, so it's slightly it's not always clear what the proverb actually is about. The leg of a lark is better than the body of a kite. Is it? I don't know. I've not eaten either.
Well, I think the lark is a nice bird, whereas the kite is not a pleasant bird to interact with in any way, whether eating or conversation.
It's a working bird, I suppose, as well, isn't it?
Isn't it a predator? I mean, like a predatorial sort of.
Yeah.
Kites are carrion eaters.
There's reference. Well, I think they may have trained them though as well.
I don't know if they were used in falconry. They weren't necessarily raptors. They're not. I think they eat mostly dead things rather than being birds of prey. So I don't know how useful they'd be to a falconer. But who knows? Maybe they did train them to bring things back.
Wedding is destiny, and hanging likewise.
I've heard that one before. Marriage and hanging go by destiny.
Again, it's that thing that sometimes they're slightly rephrased or phrased in a slightly weird way, so that you have to be familiar with the proverb to actually know what actually is being said there. It's sort of interesting. I'm interested in these things.
There's a sort of weird thing going on with the proverbs that you're supposed to kind of hear a few words and sort of sit there and ponder them, and there's this tsunami of proverbs. You've got no chance to ponder at all because you're being swamped by the bloody things.
I suppose this is why it functions more as literature than as performance, because as literature you can sit down and look at the book and go, yes, that one. It feels like something where you need to have a few other books around you to cross-reference with and go, you're being very erudite and clever there, Mr. Heywood. Eric, were you wearing? Did I imagine that?
No, I was just going to ask something once again to sort of build.
Oh.
Yeah, I was going to ask about better lack than leave, and I can't remember what the other one was. Yeah, just I don't know, it's so weird.
Yeah, there's it's hungry dogs will eat dirty puddings.
Yeah, that just
I've never
in
heard
context
that. I mean,
that just sounded wrong.
It sounds like EastEnders. You dirty pudding.
Yeah,
Not worth it.
It's it's just I mean, it's a perfectly reasonable point. Yes, I suppose beggars can't be choosers, I suppose, is what we'd say as a modern thing.
The one I can't work out the one that doesn't really fit is out of sight, out of mind. Like that doesn't. I mean, if you're going to marry someone, they're not going to be out of sight or out of mind.
It's the conjunction also of the gift horse in a mouth with though her mouth be foul, she hath a fair tail. I mean, we haven't really talked about the sort of underlying problem of this text, which is it's two blokes talking about two absent women in this slightly derogatory way, and I'm sure it was considered terribly witty and fun to be doing this, whereas now it's a little more problematic, as it were. Thoughts going on, or should we just crack on with some more text? Let's just crack on with some more text. So we'll swap over. Liza, if you can be the narrator again, and Emma, if you can be the interlocutor. Liza, chapter 6.
Ye have, quoth I, in these conclusions found sundry things that very savorly sound, and both these long cases being well viewed in one short question we may well include, which is, whether best or worst be to be led with riches without love and beauty to wed, or with beauty without riches for love.
This question,
Quoth he,
inquireth all that I move.
it doth so, said I, and is nearly couched. But the answer will not so briefly be touched, and yourself to length it taketh direct trade for all reasons that I have yet made. Ye seem more to seek reasons how to contend than to the counsel of mine to condescend. And to be plain, as I must with my friend, I perfectly feel even at my finger's end, so hard is your hand set on your halfpenny, that my reasoning your reason setteth not by. But reason for reason ye so stiffly lay by proverb for proverb that with you do weigh, that reason only shall herein not move you to hear more than speak, wherefore I will prove you with reason assisted by experience, which myself saw not long since nor far hence in a matter so like this, fashioned in frame, that none can be like her, it seemeth even the same. And in the same as yourself shall espy, each sentence soothed with a proverb well nigh, and at the end of same ye shall clearly see how this short question shortly answered may be.
Yea, marry,
Quoth he,
now ye shoot nigh the prick. Practice in all, above all toucheth the quick. Proof upon practice must take hold more sure than any reasoning by guess can procure. If ye bring practice in place, without fabling, I will banish both haste and busy babbling. And yet that promise to perform is mickle, for in this case my tongue must oft tickle. Ye know well it is, as telleth us this old tale, meet that a man be at his own bridal.
if he wive well, quoth I, meet and good it were, or else as good for him, another were there. But for this your bridal, I mean not in it that silence shall suspend your speech every whit, but in these marriages which ye hear me, since this tale containeth the counsel I can give, I would see your ears attend with your tongue for advice in both these weddings, old and young, in which hearing, time seen, when and what to talk, when your tongue tickleth, at will let it walk. And in these bridals to the reasons of ours, mark mine experience, in this case of yours.
Chapter 7.
Within few years past, from London no far way, where I and my wife with our poor household lay, 2 young men were abiding, whom to describe, were I portraying persons dead or alive, as cunning and as quick to touch them at full, as in that feat I am ignorant and dull, never could I paint their pictures to allow more lively than to paint the picture of you. And as your 3 persons show one similitude, so show you 3 one in all things to be viewed. Likewise a widow and a maid there did dwell, alike like the widow and the maid ye of tell. The friends of them 4 in every degree, standing in state as the friends of you 3. These 2 men each other so hasted or tarried, that those 2 women on one day they married into 2 houses, which next my house did stand, the one on the right, the other on the left hand. Both bridegrooms bade me I could do none other but dine with the one and sup with the other. He that wedded this widow, rich and old, and also she favored me so that they would make me dine or sup once or twice in a week. This poor young man and his make, being to seek as oft where they might eat or drink, I them bade, were I at home, to such pittance as I had. Which common conference such confidence wrought in them to me that deed, word, nay well nigh thought, chanced among them whatsoever it were, but one of the 4 brought it straight to mine ear, whereby between these twain and their 2 wives, both for wealth and woe, I knew all their 4 lives. Stephen, take over.
Okay. And since the matter is much intricate between side and side, I shall here separate all matters on both sides and then sequestrate till the one side, while t'other be full rehearsed in rate, as for your understanding may best stand. And this poor couple shall come first in hand, who the day of the wedding and after a while could not look each on other, but they must smile. As a whelp for wantonness in and out whips, so played these twain, as merry as 3 chips.
And now it gets a bit more confusing because now we're into the story interlocutors, I think, aren't we? Or
Are we?
no, maybe we're not. Maybe we're not. No, you're interjecting on the story. I think we're not in the story. It's okay. Emma, continue.
Yea, there was God,
Quoth he.
when all is done.
Abide, quoth I, it was yet but honeymoon. The black ox had not tread on his nor her foot. But ere this branch of bliss could reach any root, the flowers so faded that in 15 weeks a man might espy the change in their cheeks, both of this poor wretch and his wife, this poor wench. Their faces told toys that Tottenham was turned French, and all their light laughing turned and translated into sad sighing. All mirth was abated. And one morning timely, he took in hand to make to my house a sleeveless errand, hawking upon me his mind herein to break, which I would not see till he began to speak, praying me to hear him. I said I would, wherewith this that followeth forthwold he told.
Okay, so that's when we get this is where it gets more confusing as to who's who. But yes, so the response to the young man's exposition on the 2 choices, our narrator says, well, let me tell you a story. As it happened, it's a weird coincidence, this, but you wouldn't believe it, but oddly enough, I've seen this in action in my next door neighbours. It's just exactly the same combination as what we happen to be talking about. I mean, who'd have thought it? It's so implausible, it must be true. Or not, as it's otherwise known. So they've set up this. But I think more importantly to discuss at this particular point, their faces told toys that Tottenham was turned French. Anyone want to know what the hell that one's from? Is that actually a proverb? Or is that just a line? Is that just a witty line of Heywood's? I don't think it's an actual proverb, is it?
We'd have to look it up, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Told toys. I don't understand toys.
Unless there's a typo in there, and that's
Maybe it's tous, as in like, as in everyone, like sort of in French. Told tous, Tottenham was turned French.
told to we.
I don't know. I mean, it could be like bad French or something. But
Yeah,
then
could
Tottenham
be.
was turned French.
There are occasional typos creeping in, but
Yeah.
it's just the Tottenham turned French is an interesting concept, which might be a thing.
Okay. It is a thing. It is a proverb, according to the internet.
How is it?
The internet knows many things.
To the internet!
And the internet
The
tells us it was printed in the Proverbs of John Heywood in 1546.
This is pigs will fly. At the beginning of the reign of Henry VIII, a vast number of French mechanics came over to England, filling not only the outskirts of the town, but also the neighbouring villages. So I guess this is like Huguenots and stuff, is it?
Still not quite sure how that fits with the sentence, but never mind. An interesting thing. There's a merriest 3 chips.
That was my favourite.
Yeah. Now you shoot nigh the prick, practice in all above all toucheth the quick. Yeah, so shoot nigh the mark, I suppose, is what we'd say now. But yeah.
Yeah, but that doesn't rhyme with quick.
No, it doesn't. Well, shooting for I usually go for a pronunciation of prike rather than prick, but that's just possibly me shifting sound to make it sound less rude. But yes, we've had that in Robin Hood things of aiming effectively for a stick. So yeah, okay. So we're now within the story. We're inside the story. Someone's telling a story within the story. So I'll ask Eric. Could you read the story within a story? Stephen is still doing the quotes. So because you're who's telling the story? Stephen's telling the story. Yes. So Stephen's doing the quotes. Yes, of this story.
Okay.
Because you're being told this story. Yes. Chapter 8. Good luck, everyone. Eric, you're up.
Yeah, I edited this and I still don't know what's going on. I am now driven,
Quoth he,
for ease of my heart to you, to utter part of mine inward smart, and the matter concerneth my wife and me, whose fathers and mothers long since dead be, but uncles with aunts and cousins have we, diverse, rich on both sides, so that we did see if we had wedded where each kindred would, neither of us had lacked either silver or gold, but never could suit on either side obtain 1 penny to the wedding of us twain, and since our one marrying or marring day, where any of them see us, they shrink away, solemnly swearing as such as may give aught, while then we live, them we get right naught. Nor naught have we, nor no way aught can we get, saving by borrowing till we be dead. So far that no man any more will us lend, whereby for like we both be at our wits' end, whereof no wonder, since the end of our good and beginning of our charge together stood. But wit is never good till it be bought, howbeit when bought wits to best price be brought, yet is 1 good forward worth 2 afterwards. This payeth me home, lo, and full more folly hits, for I had looked afore with indifferent eye, though haste had made me thrust never so dry. Yet to drown this must I needs think, as I would needs brew, so must I needs drink. Drink of my bride cup I should have forborne, till temperance had tempered the taste before. I see now, and shall see while I am alive, who weddeth ere he be wise, shall die ere he thrive. I sing now in this factus est repente. Now mine eyes be open, I do repent me. He that will sell a lawn before he can fold it, he shall repent him before he have sold it. Some bargains dear bought, good cheap would be sold. No man loveth his fetters, be they made of gold. Were I loose from the lovely links of my chain, I would not dance in such fair fetters again. In house to keep household, when folks will needs wed. More things belong than 4 bare legs in a bed. I reckoned my wedding a sugar sweet spice, but reckoners without their host must reckon twice. And although it were sweet for a week or twain, sweet meat will have its sour sauce I see now plain. Continual penury which I must take, telleth me better I out than alway ache. Boldly and blindly I ventured on this, how be it, who so bold as blind Bayard is? And herein to blame any man, then should I rave, for I did it myself, and self do, self have. But a day after fair cometh this remorse for relief. For though it be good horse that never stumbleth, what praise can that avouch to jades that break their necks at first trip or touch? And before this, my first foil or breakneck fall, subtly like a sheep, thought I shall cut my coat after my cloth when I have her. But now I can smell nothing, hath no savor. I am taught to know, in more haste than good speed, how judicare came into the creed. My careful wife in one corner weepeth in care, and I in another. The purse is threadbare. This corner of our care,
Quoth he,
I you tell, to crave therein your comfortable counsel.
And chapter 9, back to our narrator talking to the person in the story. I think.
I just pressed the wrong button. Chapter 9, right. I am sorry, quoth I, of your poverty, and more sorry that I cannot succour ye. If ye stir your need mine arms to stir, then of troth ye beg at the wrong man's door. There's nothing more vain, as yourself tell can, than to beg a breach of a bare-arsed man.
I come to beg nothing of you,
quoth he,
save your advice, which may my best way be, how to win present self for this present sore.
I'm like the ill surgeon, said I, without store of good plasters. Howbeit, such as they are, ye shall have the best I have. But first declare where your and your wives' rich kinsfolk do dwell.
Environed about us,
quoth he,
which showeth well, the nearer to the church, the farther from God. Most part of them dwell within 1,000 rod, yet shall we catch a hare with a tabor as soon as catch aught of them, and rather.
You play cold prophet, quoth I, who taketh in hand to know his answer before he do his errand.
What should I to them?
Quoth he.
Flinger flit, an unbidden guest, knoweth not where to sit. I'm cast at cart's arse. Some folk in lack cannot please. A broken sleeve holdeth the arm. A broken sleeve holdeth the arm back, and shame holdeth me back, being thus forsaken.
Tush, man, quoth I, shame is as it is taken. Shame take him that shame thinketh, ye none. Unminded, unmoaned, go make your moan till meat fall in your mouth. Will ye lie in bed or sit still? Nay, he that gapeth till he be fed may fortune to fast and famish for hunger. Set forward, ye shall never labour younger.
Well,
quoth he.
If I shall needs this bide make, with as good a will as bear goeth to the stake, I will straightway anchor and hoist up sail, and thitherward hie me in haste like a snail, and home again hitherward, quick as be. Now, for good luck, cast an old shoe after me. And first mine uncle, brother to my father, by suit I will essay to win some favour, who brought me up till my wedding was done, loved me not as his nephew, but as his son. And his heir had I been, had not this chance of good lands and goods, which should have been much advanced.
Trudge, quoth I, to him, and on your Marybones crouch to the ground, and not so oft as one speak any words to him to the contrary.
I cannot tell that,
quoth he.
By St. Mary, one ill word accepts another, as folks spake.
Well, quoth I, better is to bow than break. It hurteth not the tongue to give fair words. The rough net is not the best catcher of birds. Since ye cannot win if ye cannot please, best is to suffer, for of sufferance cometh ease.
Cause causeth,
Quoth he.
and as cause causeth me, so will I do.
With this, away went he. Yet whether his wife should go with him or no, he sent her to me to know ere he would go, whereto I said I thought best he went alone. And you, quoth I, to go straight as he is gone among your kinsfolk likewise, if they dwell nigh.
And we'll ask Emma if you can be the story within the person within the story, the woman.
Yes,
Quoth she.
all round about, even hereby, namely an aunt, my mother's sister, who well, since my mother died, brought me up from the shell, and much would have given me, had my wedding grown upon her fancy, as it grew upon mine own. And in likewise, mine uncle, her husband, was a father to me.
Well, quoth I, let pass. And if your husband will his assent grant, go, he to his uncle, and you to your aunt.
Yes, this assent he granted before.
Quoth she.
For he ere this thought this the best way to be. But of these two things he would determine none without aid. For two heads are better than one. With this we departed.
Oh no, that's back.
Oh no, not me.
With this we departed, she to her husband, and I to dinner to them on the other hand.
So everyone goes off to dinner. So we're still within the story, but they're eating. They're having a meal within the story with these neighbours who are definitely real. They're definitely real. This story is definitely real, even though we said earlier that it was entirely, he put a disclaimer in. We're getting some really weird lines again. Some really quite fun ones. I do quite like I'm cast at cart's arse. I thought that was quite an interesting one. Nothing more vain than to beg a breach of a bare-assed man. I thought that was that's one for a t-shirt. I have to say. I think that's that's rather nicely done. Sweetmeat will have sour sauce. We've heard that one before in plays. I'm sure that rings a bell.
We had that in Faustus.
Mm.
In the source text.
Mm. So yeah, these things do pop up. They do pop up. So yeah, the young the chap within the story who's married the younger but poor, they're having some money troubles. I'm gathering here. They're sort of caught in a saving by borrowing till we be in debt. So payday loans just go cycle here, isn't it? It's a difficult time for them. Yeah, thoughts on the room?
It's kind of like a Shaggy Dog story, isn't it? It just goes on and on and on, and then there's somebody else tells a story within the story.
Mm.
The Proverbs are, I mean, they just give it a different kind of verbal texture.
Mm.
But for all that, they are a bit difficult in bulk for me.
Mm.
Because well, I've sort of said it before, really, that they come so quick and fast, and there's just sort of icebergs of context that we don't have any time for at all. But on the other hand, if it was just telling the story, it would be more would needed to have happened by now.
Yeah, because very little is happening. I mean, it's
the words
not like,
are what is happening.
Yeah, because basically nothing's happening.
We kind of miss the game, I think. I mean, it's a bit like it's a bit like one of these sort of French experimental, right? The early Poe or somebody like that, where writing the novel without using the letter E or something. It's a kind of, but we can't get the game.
Well, I mean, I can see the game. You know, he's cramming in as many proverbs as he can into this story. But as I say, there isn't a story. It is this shaggy dog story. It's you know, no spoilers here, but it's not necessarily going to go anywhere very fast. But or at least we won't get a conclusion per se about what the original interlocutors are discussing. I'll go to Eric, then Stephen.
I just like how he's basically going, go beg to your sort of relatives, but you don't have to come. Like, he doesn't invite them over for dinner. He just kind of goes, well, you go do that, and then I'll go have dinner, and then we'll meet again afterwards.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
Obviously, this is a story thing. It's not really, yeah.
Well, he doesn't want to invite them over because he knows they're not going to be able to do him a decent solid in return because they haven't got. I'm sure they don't have anything to eat in their house that's particularly exciting. So what are you going to do, Stephen?
It just occurred to me that the modern equivalent would be something with song lyrics. I mean, we do get plays in this period, don't we, which kind of quote song lyrics and play with them. And there's this kind of, or even people sing lines from them. And it's sort of a bit like that. What we're kind of missing is recognizing these things. And if you were doing a version of it today where you tried to get that effect, which you needn't do, then, you'd need something that people would recognize to appreciate the game, perhaps. But you'd basically have to write your own then, wouldn't you?
Yes. I mean, I think it's a very useful exercise for us because it means we're absorbing some of the sort of phrases that we will hear in plays or other culture further down the line that, this is a source text that has influence. So it won't help our audience necessarily, but it might help us as an exercise. But you're right. It does feel like it's a game that I'm just interested in why this is so successful a text. And is it just simply because it's a really good collection of proverbs, or were people really into their proverbs? Because you say he writes loads more of these. He doesn't play this game. It becomes more of just a list of proverbs, I think, and epigrams later on. But this particular thing is like he spent some time trying to craft something different rather than just do a list. And then maybe he decided he couldn't be bothered to do that anymore and just did some lists.
It's a kind of virtuoso performance because there's all sorts of proverbs, and presumably with different kinds of meters, if you like, different kinds of beats to them. He's got to find rhymes for some of them, and you get these sort of presumably dazzling, moments where he's stacking 3 or 4 of these things on top of one another and still making it verse and still as the young folks say about the rappy stuff, it's still got the flow, hasn't it?
But I think what it's losing is, of course, is just straightforward meaning, because we're talking about nothing's really happening, but there's often times when I'm not sure if anything's happening because I can't really figure out what they're actually talking about because they've crammed so many proverbs in. It's like, what's the point of this sentence and where does it live? Eric.
Yeah, I think that was the point where when I was reading, if I shall needs this voyage make with as good will as a bear goeth to the stake, and then the next line is like, I will straightway anchor and hoist up sail and haste like a snail. So basically he's like, yeah, I don't really want to go. But the first line is kind of like, I mean, the straightway anchor is just kind of, I don't know, like, I'll run. I don't know.
Yeah. In haste like a snail. He doesn't want to go back too quickly. But then every so often a proverb pops out at you and just goes, yes, that hasn't changed at all. For 2 heads are better than 1. The phrasing of that is no different at all. And it, immediately go, oh yeah, I'm in the right universe. Okay, we will read chapter 10. We'll keep with the same reading team, as it were. So, Stephen, you're still the narrator. Emma, you are the next door neighbour, and Eric, you're the other next door neighbour. We'll see how that goes. But I think it's mostly Emma coming up once dinner is over. So, Stephen, take us after dinner.
When dinner was done, I came home again to attend on the return of the queen. And ere 3 hours to end were fully tried, home came she first. Welcome, quoth I, well hied,
Yea, a short horse is soon curried,
quoth she.
but the weaker hath the worse, we all may see. And after our last parting, my husband and I departed, each to place agreed formally. Mine uncle and aunt on me did lower and gloam. Both bade me good speed, but none bade me welcome. Their folks gloamed on me too, by which it appeareth the young cock croweth as he the old heareth. At dinner they were, and made, for manners' sake, a kinswoman of ours, me to table take, a false flattering filth, and if that be good, none better to bear two faces in one hood. She speaketh as she would creep into your bosom. And when the meal mouth hath won the bottom of your stomach, then will the pick thank it tell to your most enemies you to buy and sell. To tell tales out of school, that is her great lust. Look what she knoweth, blab it whist, and out it must. There is no mo such titfills in England's ground, to hold with the hare and run with the hound, fire in the one hand and water in the other. The make-beat beareth between brother and brother. She can wink on the ewe and worry the lamb. She maketh earnest matters of every flim-flam. She must have an oar in every man's barge, and no man may chat aught in aught of her charge. Coal under cane stick she can play on both hands. Dissimulation well she understands. She is lost with an apple and won with a nut. Her tongue is no edge tool, but yet it will cut. Her cheeks are purple ruddy like a horse plum, and the big part of her body is her bum. But, sorry. But little tittle tale I have heard ere this, as high as 2 horse loaves her person is. Her privy nips or casts overthwart the shins. He shall lease the mastery that with her begins. She is to turn love to hate or joy to grief, a pattern as neat as a rope for a thief. Her promise of friendship for any avail, as sure to hold as an eel by the tail. She is neither fish nor flesh nor good red herring. She is a ringleader there, and I, fearing she would spit her venom, though it not evil, to set up a candle before the devil, I clawed her by the back in way of a charm, to do me not the more good, but the less harm, praying her in her ear on my side to hold, she thereto swearing by her false faith she would. Straight after dinner, mine aunt had no choice, but other burst out in Pilate's voice. Ye huswife, what wind bloweth ye hither this night? Ye might have knocked till ye came in, leave is light. Better unborn and untaught, I have heard say, but ye be better fed than taught far away. Not very fat fed, said this flabbergibbet, but need hath no law, need maketh her hither jet. She cometh, niece Alice, quoth she, for that is her name, more for need than for kindness, pain of shame. Howbeit she cannot lack, for he finds us that seeks. Lovers live by love as larks live by leeks, said this Alice, much more than half in mockage. Tush, quoth mine aunt, these lovers in dotage think the ground bear them not, but wed of courage they must in all haste, though a leaf of borage might buy all the substance that they can sell. Well, aunt, quoth Alice, all is well that ends well. Yea, Alice, of a good beginning cometh a good end. Not so good to borrow as be able to lend. Nay, indeed, aunt, quoth she, it is sure so. She must needs grant she hath wrought her own wrought her own woe. She thought Alice she had seen far in a millstone when she got a husband, and namely such one, as by the wedding could not only naught win, but lose both living and love of all their kin. Good aunt, quoth I, humbly I beseech ye, my trespass done unto you forgive it me. I know, and knowledge I have wrought mine own pain, but things past my hands I cannot call again. True, quoth Alice, things done cannot be undone. Be they done in due time, too late or too soon. But better late than never to repent this. Too late, quoth mine aunt, this repentance showed is. When the steed is stolen, shut the stable door. I took her for a rose, but she breedeth a burr. She cometh to stick to me now in her lack, rather to rent off my clothes from my back, than to do me 1 farthing worth of good. I see day at this little hole, for this hood showeth what fruit will follow. In good faith, I said, in way of your petition, I sue for your aid. Ah, well, quoth she, now I well understand. The walking staff hath caught warmth in your hand, a clean-fingered huswife, and an idle, folks say, and will be lime-fingered, I fear, by my fay. It is as tender as a parson's layman, naught can she do, and what can she have then? As sober as she seemeth, few days come about, but she will once wash her face in an ale-clout, and then between her and the rest of the rout, I proud and thou proud, who shall bear the ashes out? She may not bear a feather, but she must breathe. She maketh so much of her painted sheath. She thinketh her farthing good silver, I tell you, but for a farthing whoever did sell you might boast you to be better sold than bought. And yet though she be worth naught, nor have naught, her gown is gayer and better than mine. At her gay gown, quoth Alice, you may repine, howbeit as we may, we love to go gay all. Well, well, quoth mine aunt, pride will have a fall, for pride goeth before, and shame cometh after. Sure, said Alice in manner of mocking laughter, there is nothing in this world that agreeth worse than doth a lady's heart and a beggar's purse. But pride she showeth none, her look reason alloweth. She looketh as butter would not melt in her mouth. Well, the still sow eats up all the draught, Alice. All is not gold that glisters, by told tales. In youth she was toward and without evil, but soon ripe, soon rotten, young saint, old devil. Howbeit, lo God, sendeth the shrewd cow short horns. While she was in this house, she sat upon thorns. Each one day was 3, till liberty was borrow. For 1 month's joy to bring her whole live's sorrow. It were pity, quoth Alice, but she should do well. For beauty and stature she beareth the bell. Ill weed growth fast, Alice, whereby the corn is lawn, for surely the weed overgroweth the corn. Ye praise the wine before ye tasted the grape, but she can no more harm than can a she-ape. It is a good body, her property proves. She lacketh but even a new pair of sleeves. If I may say, as they say, tell troth without sin, of troth she is a wolf in a lamb's skin. Her heart is full high, when her eye is full low. A guest as good lost as found for all this show. But many a good cow hath an evil calf. I speak this, daughter, in thy mother's behalf. My sister, God rest her soul, whom though I boast, was called the flower of honesty in this coast. Aunt, quoth I take for father and mother mine uncle and you above all other. When we would, you would not be our child, quoth she. Wherefore now when you would, now will not we. Since thou wouldst need cast away thyself thus, thou shalt sure sink in thine own sin for us. Aunt, quoth I, after a doting or drunken deed, let submission obtain some mercy or meed. He that killeth a man when he is drunk, quoth she, shall be hanged when he's sober. And he, whom in itching no scratching will forbear, he must bear the smarting that shall follow there. And thou, being born very nigh of my stock, though nigh be my kirtle, yet near is my smock. I have one of mine own who I must look to. Yea, aunt, quoth Alice, that thing must ye needs do. Nature compelleth you to set your own up first. For I have heard say, it is a dear collop that is cut out of their own flesh. But yet, aunt, so small may her request be, that you may grant to satisfy the same which may do her good, and you no harm, in advancing of your own blood. And cousin, quoth she, Alice to me, what ye would crave, declare that our aunt may know what ye would have. Nay, quoth I, be the winners or losers. Folk always say beggars should be no choosers. With thanks I shall take whatever mine aunt please. Where nothing is, a little doth ease. Hunger maketh hard beans sweet. Where saddles lack, better ride on a pad than on the horse bareback. And by this proverb appeareth this one thing, that always something is better than nothing. Hold fast when ye have it, quoth she, by my life. The boy, thy husband, and thou the girl, his wife, shall not consume that I have laboured for. Thou art young enough, and I can work no more. Kit Callop, my cousin, saw thus far on, and in mine aunt's ear she whispereth anon, roundly these words to make this matter whole. Aunt, let them that be a cold blow at the coal. They shall for me, Alice, quoth she, by God's bliss. She and I have shaken hands, farewell, unkissed. And thus, with a beck as good as a due guard, she flang from me, and I from her hitherward, begging of her booteth not the world of a bean, not the worth of a bean. Little knoweth the fat sow what the lean doth mean. Forsooth, quoth I, ye have bestirred ye well, but where was your uncle? Well, narrator.
Forsooth, quoth I, ye bestirred ye well, but where was your uncle while all this fray fell?
Asleep by,
Quoth she,
routing like a hog. And it is evil waking of a sleeping dog. The bitch and her whelp might have been asleep too, for aught they in waking to me would do. Fare ye well.
quoth she,
I will now home straight, and at my husband's hands for better news wait.
Well done, Emma, for that tour de force. Decided we weren't going to try and figure out who the interlocutors in the middle of that were, because we weren't quite sure precisely how many people were in the room talking. As it turns out, there was your Aunt Alice and you, and also another person who speaks towards the end as well, Kit Callot. So yeah, it's quite a busy room, and actually there's a bit of meat to this narrative. I you know, it's the way the aunt is going. You know, you're appealing to your aunt. You know, when my parents died, you were like a mother to me, and she basically throws it in the face and said, well, when we wanted to be your parents, you didn't want us, and now you need us. Well, fuck you. And it's hard. There's a really quite hard quality to those characters there. And yeah, it's this sort of, you know, will you help me? Will you help me? Nah. You're getting nowhere fast with this lot. And yes, as we noticed, there are some descriptions of the people in the room at the beginning of the story.
It just took me by surprise.
Yes, her cheeks are purple ruddy like a horse plum, and the big part of her body is her bum. Well, good for her. So yeah, just yeah, it does sort of come out of nowhere, doesn't it? So yeah, so said this flibbertigibbet. Yeah, quite an early use of the flibbertigibbet. Yeah, thoughts in the room about this complicated little back and forth. But I say it's got a bit of oomph to it, even through all the proverbs. Once it got going, I thought there was some good stuff there.
I found the couplets a bit wearing. I don't know if it was just that the dialogue within the story is also in couplets, or you know, not full couplets maybe, and so you keep getting these kind of two-line gags, you know.
Mm.
It's you sort of see the whole point of blank verse in a way.
Mm.
There doesn't seem to be. I don't know. It's something to do with it being a story that's being told, rather than somebody just littering what they're saying with proverbs. It just maybe gets, I don't know, overcomplicated, or maybe the story doesn't, you know, other people's dialogue doesn't sound quite so convincing in couplet form.
It's
you know,
hard,
the
it's
frame's
hard,
wrong or something.
It's harder to build differentiated character when they're all trapped within a very similar writing style. And you're right, it is wearing. I think couplets are by their nature just quite wearing after a while. You sort of do get trapped in it, and you know most plays will alternate a verse style. They might do couplets for a while, but you know, and some plays manage it all the way through, but they're usually comedies. But you know, we've done quite a lot of plays which do a lot of rhyming, but they might alternate the rhyming scheme across the actual course of the event. Whereas this, it's reminding me of what I did with The Ghost of Richard III, which had a very, very firm verse stanza style structure. And it was to make it into a dramatic monologue, I did kind of have to kill the verse. I did have to destroy it because it just was too repetitious and too trappy in the same style. And there is a bit of a problem actually with Heywood generally, is that his writing style is very distinctive, but it goes on for a long time.
Having said that, I mean, this could just be the cold read thing. That, you know, if you were actually doing it live, then you wouldn't just be banging into these rhymes. You know, you'd be flowing over them, and people would go, "Oh, isn't that clever? That rhymes with that." But they wouldn't be trapped within that kind of, you know, what we've got is the visual here, which is a full stop every, you know, 20 syllables or whatever the hell it is. But if you didn't do that in performance, then you'd get the cleverness of the form without being so constrained by it. But because we're just hitting it cold and we're looking for kind of how to punctuate it, and it's, you know, Emma's just doing this fantastic job of making sense why she was reading it, you know. So it is possibly just to do with, you know, the cold read thing as well.
Yeah, it was interesting because when we were first sort of playing around with the different readers, and you were sort of playing around with a slightly different way of presenting it, and you know, there are different ways, but I think it's still inevitably going to be a bit wearing. It's going to be difficult to break it up for a duration. That said, if we were to do it as a live thing, as a performance thing, you know, we would cut. Cuts would occur because there's a lot of stuff here. It's not a gimme so far. It has to be said. You know, this is more something to dissect and savor than necessarily throw out there. Eric.
I find this quite interesting because like the husband's description isn't particularly strong, but then when you get to this part, which is actually like a description of dialogue, narration of dialogue, I don't know how you would say it. It feels more like it could be acted because you can kind of see the aunt going, "Oh, it is a good body. Yes, of course, it's a good body, but her property priest, you lack but even a pair of sleeves." Like sort of it comes to life because you can kind of imagine them sitting around a table taking this girl down sort of several notches. And I think also just the whole ruddy purple cheeks or whatever the line was is kind of, you know, you already have them in your head. It's like that sort of old wives' tale kind of vibe.
Yeah, I mean, ironically, the bit which could have utilised all the speakers in the room is the bit that we asked Emma to read all the way through because we weren't sure who was who. I mean, we could go back and do it again and split up the parts. I am sort of debating with myself now at what point to sort of pause, whether that is actually a good point to basically close the session, as we're about halfway through part one, and take a breather on it all. Sadly, Liza has only just come back into the room with a plumbing emergency, so it's a bit difficult on that thing. Do we want to just quickly try that to see if we can read that with all the different voices? Is that something we could cope with? Do we think we could, or maybe another time, and I format it so you can tell who the hell is speaking? Because I think we might all get lost, mightn't we? We'd all get lost. Okay, so maybe when we start next time, I'll reformat that sequence and see if we can, and because it'll be good to run into something we've already done to pick up where we are in the narrative. Because the slender though it is, a run up helps. Eric.
Yeah, this scene is weird because I mean it's sort of, aside from the whole quoth I quoth she, all that stuff. You've got Alice, you've got the aunt, you've got someone else who refers to the aunt as aunt, but isn't the speaker, the person telling the story. And then you've got Khaled, who's kind of, I don't know, just irrelevant. You know.
That seems a generic name for rather than an actual real kind of.
Yeah. But I mean, in this scene, it's just kind of okay. How many people are actually speaking?
But we've got some good proverb work here. Ones that land as modern days one. Better late than never. Steed is stolen, shut the stable door. Okay, it's phrased differently. Pride will have a fall, for pride goeth before and shame cometh after. All is not gold that glisters. Variations of which survive to today. That said, I'm less familiar with it is a dear collop that is cut out of the own flesh. I'm not sure.
Collop is a slice of meat.
Oh yes, no, I understand. I'm just not aware of it as a proverb.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that the whole bum description was actually like a proverb either. But I mean, that might just be. Yeah,
I don't think it is, because I don't think it. What does it refer to? How can you apply it to your life? At which point?
But the bits about the sort of what was the description of the hands were quite interesting. Sort of that her hands are so smooth that she's done no housework basically.
Yeah. Hold with the hare and run with a hound. She can wink on the ewe and worry the lamb. That's an interesting one. So yeah, we've got some interesting things. So I'm going to go around for basically final thoughts. We're about a quarter of the way through the text, and I'm sort of thinking about this as applications. I'm sort of thinking bits and pieces of this will be useful, and it is definitely recordable for the podcast as a shall we say an audiobook. But with many voices, I suspect, I think would make it come to life. But I'm not thinking this is an adaptationable thing. I don't think I would try and make this. I mean, you could cut it down. I suspect you can cut it down and maybe present something. But I'm not sure that it's quite enough of a gimme to say it's worth doing at this stage. But certainly, it's interesting, but it is more of that strange literary thing. Eric, do you have any final thoughts you want to throw in?
I kind of wish that Sarah was here, Sarah Blake, because like she's sort of the audio person for a lot of stuff, and I don't know, I think she'd enjoy sort of, especially this scene, just I don't know, and obviously all the random proverbs. Yeah, I don't know. It's such a weird text. I don't know what you would do with it, though. Like you could frame it somehow and have like effects in the background, but then you wouldn't want to like lose the proverbs if it's all about proverbs.
Yeah, this is the sort of the problem, is that this literary project of cramming in as many proverbs makes it really difficult to focus on what the hell is going on. But you wouldn't want to lose that. So it's sort of a contradiction. Stephen, any final thoughts?
Well, no. I mean, my final thoughts, I think you and Eric have just uttered between you, really. It's an avant-garde text, isn't it? And, it's this kind of dizzying and embedding of stories within stories within stories. At the same time, the other part of the game is the proverbial stuff and the virtuosity with which he does that. But that is really difficult to square with, an actual dramatic story as well. I think, this is kind of like the pure avant-garde versus the proverb. The two things. He manages to do that with the words, but trying to give us kind of stories with morals, with all those other kind of initial starting points and constraints. I think it's kind of spoiling the broth.
It does feel like it's something that should be on in a nightclub in Zurich in around 1917, doesn't it? It has
you
that
can
sort
imagine a 20th century version of it, and everyone will be going, "My God, this is mind blowing! How many narrators? How many layers are there? And look, every other word is a quotation. This is fantastic."
It does speak to the wasteland at times, doesn't it? In terms of how many quotations can you shove into a text.
Yeah, we need to do it in different voices.
Yeah.
I guess also the rhyme scheme kind of makes it like it's too fast for you, like sort of to catch up, for your brain to catch up if you're reading it.
You'd almost need to project the proverbs on the back of the screen with, so that people can keep with it but again, it's almost like there's too much data to throw at someone if you're doing it live, whereas as a book it's something you can savor and go, well, that's very clever, and pick apart who people are. I'm always amazed by how early modern texts often don't properly explicate who the fuck is talking in prose. I always and verse things like this where going, how do you know who's maybe I'm just not trying hard enough. Emma, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I guess just going back over that most recent chapter first, there were moments where it really clicked and I was like, yeah, I've got it. And there were moments where it just ran away from me and I lost it again. But yeah, I guess that's all part of it. And it kind of begs the question, do you do it with lots of voices, lots of different actors for different voices, or do you do two people who put on all the voices? I guess that's a decision to make. The number of actors involved. I think it's a text that's very aware of its own cleverness, and that's the joy of it. I think not only how many proverbs you can fit in the text, but the skill of the actor speaking this very rhythmic, very rich text, which has quite a pace on it. I think it would work well as audio. If it was on stage, I'm kind of imagining it's very kind of stripped back stage, pretty much a bare stage with like just two mics on stands, and perhaps like Rob, you said it first, but words projected at the back as you go along, something like that. Very edgy.
I suspect it's not going to be threatening the West End anytime soon, though. Right. And I'll just ask Liza's light fitting. Do you have any final thoughts? No, nothing there. So, on that note, we will close this particular session. We will return to this at some point. All that remains to thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, and goodbye. Lovers live by love, as larks live by leaks.